Today on Murfreesboro Storytellers, we visit the Heart of Tennessee chapter of the American Red Cross, located at 501 Memorial Boulevard. Today, our guest for Murfreesboro Storytellers is Kathy Farrell, who is Executive Director of the American Red Cross chapter, located in Murfreesboro on Memorial Boulevard.
Yes, sir.
Kathy, tell us about your work here at the American Red Cross.
So I am thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate that.
Thank you for joining us.
And I will tell you that I really have had a couple of experiences with the Red Cross, so it's almost like everything has come full circle. So my grandfather was a volunteer with the American Red Cross as a CPR instructor for 45 years in Indianapolis. He's a World War II vet, was a health and safety in that department at Eli Lilly, and so that was just a natural fit for him to volunteer, and so definitely grew up with that as a part of my life. And then in Rutherford County and in Murfreesboro, I actually was working at United Way part-time, re-entered the workforce after being a stay-at-home mom. We rented space from the American Red Cross, and I had a front row seat to their response to the Good Friday tornado. And really at the time thought, this is an organization, this is a mission that I could really be passionate about. And so when this position opened up, and had a conversation with Greg King about this position and went through the process, really was excited to take that next step in my career.
There must be a number of duties that you're responsible for in this particular job. What's the main thing?
Absolutely.
What takes up most of your time?
So I think what takes up most of my time is twofold. So this chapter is based in Rutherford County, but we cover 16 additional counties in Middle Tennessee. And so Rutherford County is my home and have so many deep relationships here, and I'm so grateful to the community. But really my goal is to build those types of relationships in the other 16 counties. So cultivating relationships with volunteers, elected officials, community stakeholders, shepherding those relationships here, but cultivating them in those other 16 counties takes up the vast majority of my time. Absolutely. In
those 16 counties, do you have any type of an office or a location that you work from?
That's a great question. So we do in Cookeville. We have office space just off the square in Cookeville. We have an office in Lincoln County that's donated to us. It's in the, they have a multi-tenant sort of government building. It's there where people go to vote there, their election commission. We've got an office there. We have indirect office space in Bedford County in the EMA office, and then we have an office in Smithville. They have a multi-tenant nonprofit building, and they give Red Cross some space in that building as well. So we've got some really nice places to land, but then really without the building space, it's just meeting people in that community where they are to have conversations.
Well, the Red Cross has such a great reputation and great history in serving our country, and particularly I think about wartime, but not just wartime, but in peacetime, I guess any time around the clock.
Absolutely, and I'm so glad you brought up the war part of us, because we were talking earlier, so many folks really think about the Red Cross in terms of disaster response and relief. We do a marvelous job at that, but we were born on the battlefield during the Civil War from the concept of mercy. And so we have always supported our military. We continue to do that from the moment somebody enlists until the moment they're no longer on this earth, and we support their family as well. So active duty, veterans, and their families.
I remember a few years ago, Elizabeth Dole headed the American Red Cross and was in Murfreesboro for a visit, and had an opportunity to meet her out at the Garden Plaza Hotel.
Wow.
And she did a great job in leading it nationally.
Absolutely.
And we have leadership all over the country, I'm sure, in similar roles.
Absolutely.
You mentioned disaster relief, the Good Friday tornado. Is that an example of something the Red Cross is really involved in?
Absolutely. And so the interesting part, I've not had anything to that level occur.
Hope you don't.
And I hope I don't. Let me say, I agree completely. And so we have such a phenomenal disaster cycle services program in this chapter and in the region, which is Tennessee. That leadership is phenomenal. Really, our volunteers are who carry that work out for us. And so, yes, the Good Friday tornado is a great example. We've had a smaller one, so the tornado a couple of months ago, the EMA office and law enforcement, those partners, the fire departments, will reach out and will ask, could you put a shelter on standby? So that question would go through disaster cycle services, and is that if there's a need, yes, we're going to meet that need for our community. We will absolutely take food, drink, comfort kit items in areas where the general public might not be allowed past a certain area. We're able to go in and supply that to the first responders, but also to the victims, to the people that have been involved. So in that immediate aftermath, but then one of the things that I love about this organization is we're there immediately, but we're going to walk alongside of a family to help them recover as well. So we'll do follow-up casework and make sure that families have the tools they need immediately. Maybe that's money for a hotel room, money for some immediate basic supplies, but we're also going to match that family with an individual that can talk with them about community resources, navigating an insurance claim, whatever that family needs, to make sure that they have the tools to recover after that disaster.
So when a disaster happens or an incident happens, you are there, as you say, but not just there, but you continue along with those that are involved.
Absolutely. So we want that family, we want to help them be resilient. And so that starts immediately, but it is long-term recovery with that family. So some of those stories are remarkable. I know this past tornado, we actually had, of course, it was very difficult in our community because we lost somebody that we love in our community. But Franklin County is also a county that I cover, and structurally there was more significant damage in that county. And so what's remarkable about this organization is that we were able to pull from another chapter in Chattanooga that came in and supported that response. And then I cannot say enough about United Way. United Way of Rutherford and Cannon County is remarkable, but United Way of Franklin County is remarkable. Their executive director actually stepped in and kind of served as me during that response. So did some radio spots for me, shared some information, made sure that everybody in the community was aware of what we were doing. And so I say all that to say we're there, but we don't do it alone, John. We can't. We have to be a part of that safety net of services in every community to lift a family up after a disaster.
When an incident happens, who calls you out? Is it fire, police?
It depends. It absolutely depends. So if it's a fire, let's say it has something to do with the fire department, then there's a process there. And so leading up to a national number, an 800 number, so there's always a way to get in touch with us. It could be somebody on scene at the fire department. It could be dispatch, 911 dispatch. It could be the family themselves. So there's a number of ways that people can get in touch with us if they need that service. I will say, for example, Murfreesboro Fire Rescue Department, all of our first responders in this community are remarkable, every place. But Murfreesboro Fire Rescue is a great example. So they'll encourage the family to call, or they'll make the phone call. But then when they share their work in the community, they include us in that report. So Red Cross was on the scene assisting the family, or the family didn't need assistance from the Red Cross. So it's just, we're so fortunate to be a part of that process.
What's the least known activity or involvement that the Red Cross has that people generally don't know about?
I love that question. So I think it's twofold. I think, first of all, I think it is that service to the armed forces piece. Unless you are part of the military, I think people don't understand the depth of that service line. I would say, John, I've even been a part of that. So had received a call from St. Thomas Rutherford from a critical care caseworker on the second floor at the hospital who had a patient that was actively dying. The son of that patient was deployed, I believe, to Afghanistan. The doctor, the physician, is retired military, and so had understood what the Red Cross does in terms of that emergency communication. We're congressionally chartered to provide emergency communication between military members and family. And so she called, and I was able to walk her through, this is exactly what you need to do, this is exactly the verification that they're going to need. And she looped back around and said that young man actually made it home before his father passed away. So I'm so proud of that line of service. I also think people don't know that we do reconnection as part of international services.
Explain reconnection.
So it's fascinating, and I learned about it really baptism by fire. So when I started, Hurricane Harvey hit about 4 weeks later, and then Maria, and then Irma. So it was just a horribly devastating hurricane season. And so many people in our community have a connection with Puerto Rico. Their communication system was essentially wiped out. And so people were calling our office, I think that you do this, can you help us determine if our family's okay? And we do. And so able to connect individuals that were contacting the office with those resources so they could begin to connect with their family and see if they were okay.
How large staff do you have again?
So we have myself as a full-time. We have Disaster Cycle Services. Emily Gerard is brand new. We're thrilled to have her.
Okay.
She's full-time in this office. And then we have a part-time business operations specialist, Keith Hickerson. You met him a few moments ago. And then we have several staff that support us but cover an even larger area than us. So 2 volunteer services staff and then a service to the armed forces specialist. So fairly lean staff, but then we are an army of volunteers. So over 200 volunteers in this chapter.
That's what I was next going to ask you about. Tell us more about the volunteers and how they operate.
Absolutely. So the American Red Cross was chartered as an all-volunteer organization, and it's remarkable to be a part of. We stand shoulder to shoulder with our volunteers. Actually, they have leadership positions. There's a table of organization that includes volunteers. I myself have a volunteer partner. Phil Barnett is my volunteer partner.
Sure.
And so that's the way that we carry out our work. It allows us to, we survive on the backs of our donors, so the generosity of our donors. And so it allows us to take those donations and use them to forward the mission and serve clients, because we're lean from a staff perspective, very heavy from a volunteer perspective.
Approximately how many volunteers do you have?
220 some right now. About 223 is the last count for this chapter alone.
For this chapter, right.
For Heart of Tennessee, yes.
Now, let's talk about your budget and your funding. Do you get any funding from the overall American Red Cross, a national organization?
So that's a great question. We actually survive twofold. So grants, private donations, things of that nature. And then we, from an efficiency perspective, do some shared services. So maybe in across the region and in some divisions, we have a finance department that we all actually pay into, and they assist us with the financial operations. So very, no, not from the National Red Cross, but we are efficient because we share services, share services with other divisions.
Okay.
So does that make sense?
It does, yeah. Tell us about your budget.
So here, the budget, it's a $1.4 million operating budget for our 17 counties. And so that includes the overhead for this building. The only other building that we pay rent for actually is in Cookeville, and they've been very generous with us in terms of building rent. The rest of the offices I mentioned are all donated office space. So we've been incredibly fortunate from that perspective.
And you are a member of United Way.
We are a proud recipient of United Way funding, so I cannot say enough about the support of that organization. And I will also say what Megan Flippin is phenomenal at in this community. I mentioned United Way of Franklin County, but Megan equally so. If something is going on that we're responding to, Megan is happy to communicate that need, to other nonprofit. If we have a need, or if there's we're not accepting donations right now for this, or the best way to help, in this situation is a financial donation. Megan will message that for us with her board, her stakeholders, her circle of influence, which is remarkable. But, on a personal note, she will also pick up the phone and say, "How are you? What can I do for you personally?" And John, when you talk about Murfreesboro and Rutherford County, we're so blessed to have those kinds of relationships.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree. Going back to your board, how many people do you have on your board?
17.
Okay.
We have 17.
And they serve in periods, I guess?
They do. So 6-year terms.
Okay.
They can roll off for a year and we can roll them back on if we want to do that. But I really been here for about 18 months and walked into an absolutely phenomenal board. They are a working board.
Important.
I cannot agree more. So 17 really engaged board members. We have 5 functioning committees. What we've done from that perspective is said, these 17 people can't move the mission forward by themselves from a leadership perspective. And so we did a cultivation of our committees. And so we had those chairs, and the board intentionally recruit people from the community that are experts in certain areas to join us and to help us forward the mission. So on the Community Outreach Committee, that committee is led by Phil Barnett and really charged with sharing the message in the community. And so public information officers, spokespersons for different organizations, members of the media, are all on that committee. So they're experts in that area, and I feel like have done a really phenomenal job of helping us spread the word.
You mentioned helping out with a need. Well, give me an example of that happening.
Absolutely. So anybody can volunteer at any time. We will never turn a volunteer away, somebody that wants to share their time, from taking care of our fleet of vehicles, from helping us in the building. So from, a painting perspective, I had one volunteer paint the entire blood donor center.
Oh, wonderful.
They're closed one day a week, and Jim Hopkins came in here faithfully every Wednesday until that donor center was painted. And so that is an amazing investment of somebody's time and something that he's passionate about. We certainly, Disaster Cycle Services always needs volunteers, people who are willing to do a number of jobs to prepare, respond to, recover from a disaster. Operationally, we actually have Martha Talbert, retired from St. Thomas.
Yes.
She is Keith's volunteer partner, so she helps from a finance perspective and some of that record keeping. So always need volunteers, definitely.
Explain how that volunteer partner works.
So that's a great question. It was a new concept for me. So it's one person who actually knows my job well enough.
You mentioned Phil Barnett.
Phil Barnett, absolutely. So Phil really has, he's my incoming board chair for next year. He's vice chair this year. So really said, I want to be a student of the organization. So I want to learn the Red Cross so that I can effectively communicate to the community what you do. So through that process, we said that's what I do, and I need to multiply myself. And so Phil really has learned what I do and could really step in and do what I do, which is amazing. And we all are charged with having a volunteer partner. For me, with 17 counties, I have four additional volunteer leads that do the same thing for me in their community. So,
wonderful. Tell us, you're here in this building that once was occupied by the Rutherford County Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
And apparently have a very adequate facility here to handle the operation. Do you own the building?
We do.
The Red Cross owns the building?
We sure do on the building, by the generosity of the Christy Houston Foundation and other donors in the community. This building was purchased, absolutely. So we own this building free and clear.
What would be your greatest need if you had a request to be fulfilled?
Volunteers.
Volunteers.
We always need volunteers, and I can't underscore enough, we need volunteers in every line of service to help us do absolutely everything. And I think we want to be an organization. People want to be involved. We want to be a place where they can be involved, but it also allows us to move our mission forward.
Yeah, not just when a disaster occurs, but you need volunteers all the time.
We do. We need volunteers all the time. You know, at the front desk, as a blood ambassador, as a volunteer with me, volunteers at events, volunteers in operations with disaster. We have volunteers that teach community CPR classes. So the only thing we can't have a volunteer do is actually what the phlebotomist does and draw the blood. Anything else we can have a volunteer work with us, and we would love to really determine what somebody's passion is and then engage them in that way, in a meaningful way in the organization.
Of the many things that volunteers do, what's an unusual request you've had for a volunteer to act upon?
So I think for me, it probably has been the level of engagement they have with the facility. So for them asking or for me asking?
Well, either way.
Both?
Yeah, either way. Yeah.
So for me, it's been some of the facility needs, because I have a part-time business operations specialist, but maybe, you know, practically speaking, we have an issue we have a plumbing issue in the bathroom. And so we've got volunteers that's their area of expertise, and they will come in and address the clogged sink or the leak, or they'll change light bulbs for us. I have a board member, Roy Boyd, who will absolutely come in and mow the lawn for me.
Wonderful.
So it just allows us to operate and be great stewards of our donor dollars.
So you apparently don't need to employ a maintenance firm or
we don't.
Services or anything?
We have a cleaning service because we need a cleaning service, but also with the donor center downstairs, we want to make sure that we're cleaning that adequately and to meet those standards. But from a building perspective, yes, you know, and there's so many folks who are retirees or who have some time on their hands, and want to be involved. And so we have a gentleman who's done some wiring in here for us that retired as a master electrician from Nissan. So that was his skill set, and we're able to still allow him to fulfill that desire in his retirement. So it's been really amazing to see those matches occur.
That's wonderful. Just a tremendous amount of service that you render to not just our local community, but you said the 16 counties you serve, and
Absolutely.
And you branch into the other Red Cross operations around the country depending on the need of the situation. I presume.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we will, one of the things we did this year, and I'm so proud of, we deployed or sent 23, I believe, of our own volunteers to serve in areas that were impacted by a hurricane. So between Hurricane Florence and Hurricane Michael, we sent people that were trained here to go and respond. And when I first started in my position as an executive director, we actually are sent out as well. So 5 weeks in, I was sent to Orlando, Florida, prior to Hurricane Irma making landfall.
Okay.
And so it allowed me to see what this organization does on that level of a response.
Sure.
And so think about somebody like me who has 17 counties. What if all 17 are impacted?
Oh, yes.
I can't be everywhere, and I might be a victim. My family might have sustained injury, we might have sustained property damage, and so we go in as a force multiplier for the people that serve in our roles in those areas. So I worked with elected officials and worked with shelters to make sure that communication and was going back and forth and needs were met, so that the counties that had a need, they understood what the Red Cross was doing, and I could take that communication back and we could fulfill an unmet need. So it was a phenomenal learning experience.
One other aspect of the Red Cross work we haven't really discussed, and we will
Yes.
shortly as we go down to the first floor of your building, and that's your blood donor service.
Absolutely, yes. We are one of only 2 donor centers in the state.
Oh.
So Nashville has a donor center, and we have a donor center that's open 6 days a week.
Wonderful.
And I think last year, if I can recall, I think it's almost 16,000 units of blood were collected, or 16,000 donors in this area. Absolutely.
Well, thanks, Kathy. Let's take a look now at the blood donor section.
Absolutely.
Now we're on the first floor of the office of the American Red Cross in Murfreesboro, and here's where the blood donors reside.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Tell us about this operation, Kathy.
So we are so thrilled to be one of 2 blood donor centers in the state of Tennessee, one in Nashville and one in Murfreesboro. And so here we're able to do whole blood and platelets.
Okay.
Both, and there's a great need for both.
I can imagine.
Platelets really help cancer patients, folks that are really in distress. It takes about 2.5 hours to be a platelet donor. If you're a whole blood donor, about 45 minutes of your time, and every time you roll up your sleeves, you can save up to 3 lives.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes.
How many patients can you serve at one time?
So realistically, let's see, 4 platelets and 4 whole blood at the same time.
All right. Kathy, what is the basic schedule for the operation of the Blood Donor Center?
Absolutely. We are open 6 days a week. So we're open every day but Wednesday.
Okay.
And I'll tell you the best way to become a donor is either to go online. If you have a smartphone, you can download the Red Cross Blood app, and you can actually schedule an appointment from your phone. You can call the office, 615-893-4272. We can connect you and schedule an appointment. We also have people walk in the facility, and then we just talk them through that process and schedule an appointment.
Okay, so best to schedule an appointment.
It
Can
is.
walk in and
You
and be able to give
can,
blood.
absolutely. So it's always better to schedule because we want to be really cognizant of people's time. So definitely a shorter process if you schedule, but you can always walk in, and if we've got the room, we would love for you to donate.
Have any idea of the quantity of blood that's donated, say, in a year's time or a month's time?
I don't. What I do know is the number of individuals that flow through, and so about 16,000 come through this center.
In the course of a year?
In the course of a year.
That's wonderful.
So absolutely, we are so proud of this team, so proud of this facility, and grateful that we have this.
Tell us again how they should make an appointment, the number and the website.
Absolutely. So you can visit Red Cross, www.redcrossblood.org, to make an appointment. You can download the Blood Donor app. It's really easy to find. Just look in your app store, search for Blood Donor app, and it's the first thing. It's a little red blood drop, and so you can download that, or you can call the office 615-893-4272.
Kathy, we've talked about many aspects of the American Red Cross, the work it does. Anything that we haven't covered that you think of?
You know, I think the thing that we talked about and I'm so proud of is the work of our volunteers.
Oh, yes.
So I'm so thrilled that we have the volunteer base we do. We always have a need for more. And since we're wrapping up in the Blood Donor Center, you know, if you roll up your sleeve and give us 45 minutes of your time, you have the opportunity to impact up to 3 lives. And I just think that's remarkable. So certainly an area that we would love people to get involved in.
Annually, you have an event called the American Heroes Breakfast.
We do.
Tell us generally what that's about.
Absolutely. So it's our opportunity to share with the community on a very large scale the work that we do. It's also our opportunity to take somebody who's a community leader, who's been engaged with the mission of the Red Cross, and honor their work, their body of work. You've been a past honoree, John. I love that. You're still part of the program. And you know, it's been such a blessing to work with Dr. McPhee in the past, to work with Russ and Sherry Galloway in the past, people who have a connection with this organization. We honor them, and then they're able to tell their Red Cross story to the community.
Wonderful. Thank you for the great work you do in the American Red Cross.
Thank you very much.
We've enjoyed having Kathy Farrell, who is the Executive Director of the American Red Cross located in Murfreesboro.